Good morning, this is Daybreak and many thanks for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. On my far right is Professor Peter Kagwanja, the Chief Executive Officer of Africa Policy Institute. Good morning, Prof.
Morning, Abdi.
While you are away,
yeah,
many things happened.
What happened? I thought I was gone. Oh, my.
Dr. Hassan Khanenje is director at the Horn of Africa Policy Institute, which of course is influential in doing foreign policy analysis and diplomacy. Dr. good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you?
Many thanks for your time and appreciate it.
Sure.
Ahmed Ashon, my immediate right, is diplomacy and foreign affairs commentator. Good morning, Ahmed.
Good morning, Ayub.
And thanks for your time as well.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Kenneth Mbongi is also in the studio. He'll be joining us shortly. Gentlemen, a lot to digest this morning on the broadcast, and let's begin with the response from the head of state, President William Ruto, who responded to what's happening in the Middle East following the attacks on Iran by the Americans and the Israelis. Here's what the president said in a response he put up on his X account, formerly Twitter. He said, Kenya strongly condemns the strikes on the United Arab Emirates, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, plus Iraq, Oman, Kuwait, Jordan and Bahrain in the evolving conflict in the Middle East. It is evident, he said, that the regionalization of this conflict poses a grave threat to international peace and security. This is in response to what transpired over the weekend and the attacks. We'll be getting to this, Ibrahim, shortly, and the importance of that. Gentlemen, I'm sure you have come across that tweet by the head of state. First, Ahmed, to you, your response.
Well, I think that the president should have held off on that statement. I think if there's a time that we need to play the neutral card, is this. I remember there was a time in which, during the time of President Kenyatta, the senior, in which the Kenya government held a plane here. This was in 1977, and there was a war between Ethiopia and Somalia. And the Kenya government stopped a plane in Nairobi, which was full of arms. And the Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, gave Kenya an ultimatum. And the next day, Munyo Oyaki, the great Munyo Oyaki, who was one of the best foreign ministers we ever had, was on television, crying and saying that, you know, they had made a mistake. They went with Daniel Arap Moi to London, and the British made calls to the Iranian government, and things went back to normal. And that's a little bit of history about our foreign policy. I think that Mr. Ruto has shot from the hip. Mm-hmm. His foreign policy has been very gung-ho from the very beginning of the conflict in Russia, the relations with the United States, the relations with China, the relations with the UAE. Recently, you know, the problem of the UAE in the Sudan. So he has been making wrong choices as a matter of foreign policy. But what is more substantive is that the great philosopher Hegel once quipped that there is a design to world history, and that the proof of it is in understanding history. Okay. And I think that today we can see that there is a fundamental break, or I can call it an epochal break, of the international political economy. Okay. And our country has to be very, very careful in its foreign relations. It must understand that there is a clash of civilizations, that the United States is using a particular ideology. You saw in the Berlin and the Munich conference, where the Secretary of State absolutely gave an astonishing interpretation of history, in which everybody else was missing except Western civilization, including African Americans. Yeah, okay. And the little matter of even a president who came from an African American community. And he made confusion worse confounded on that day. And yesterday you saw that the president was speaking from the one side of the mouth, and his Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State Department, Mr. Rubio, was speaking on another, from the other side of the mouth. Okay. And it just encapsulates the kind of confusion of American policy in the Middle East and its liabilities.
Okay.
It is an astonishing chain of events.
Okay, we'll talk about the dichotomy in these statements. We have Marco Rubio and President Donald Trump, who yesterday hosted the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz at the White House. Dr. Khanenja, coming to you. Would it have been strategic for the president to maintain strategic silence on this matter?
There are two parts, I think, of the president's statement. One is condemning attacks on on Gulf countries. And the second part, framing it as a threat to international peace and security as a result of regionalization. Now, the second part, of course, is also true. I think what should be remembered here is perhaps the biggest threat to international peace and security is less to do with the Iranian response to what is happening and more to do with extremely brazen, almost Hobbesian, unilateral interventionism by the United States and Israel. No country since Nazi Germany have acted outside the rules or the kind of orders established, the manner in which the United States and Israel have been acting. The order that actually the United States was at the center of crafting. And I think it's about time we actually looked at it, because it is okay, first of all, to condemn regionalization of conflict that threatens not just international peace and security, but threatens to destroy our own economies because of our reliance on energy as well as other supplies. But then the genesis of it is the elephant in the room. Right now, it's not even the elephant in the room. It's actually already outside. And I think to the extent that we've been mute, and in the words of the Canadian leader, we need to stop pretending that things are actually okay and start calling things out. When you listen to the speeches even of the Secretary of War, as he prefers to call himself, who was actually a very junior military person, but I think he suffers from inferiority complex for some reason. He was talking the other day about we're not going to be constrained by the stupid rules of engagement. How can you say that and then at the same time expect actual rules-based international system? So I think the big question, and as a country that we should also approach very carefully, is where is the world going? How is it likely to look? The truth is, this is a period of transition. The US is still a great power, but the West collectively they're in decline. And because it's a period of transition, you expect some of these things to happen. Now, as a country, are we seeing where the world is going? That does not mean we have to cut our networks with traditional partners, but we need to be clear-eyed with regard to where the world is going, and it's not exactly looking north.
And Prof, coming to you, you made a very profound statement here on this broadcast in 2025 that there are instances where many people in government have been promoted into incompetence. And at the Foreign Affairs Ministry, that was a very specific point. We have concerns over the issuance of Kenyan passports, a sacred paperwork to RSF, sanctioned people by the State Department in the United States of America. Does it add up to the missteps in terms of diplomacy and our foreign policy in regards to also what's happening today in the Middle East?
I still maintain that position, that for a country to prosper, whether you want to go to Russia, you want to go to Moscow, you want to go to America or to Singapore, that state, island state, you must put your best and ablest in positions of authority, particularly where you make the most solemn decision about 58 million Kenyans. And Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a mirror of the office of the president, because one look at the world, the other one look at us inside, and the two is what makes Kenya as a republic. Therefore, when we have a limping foreign policy, when you have an incompetent, not incompetent in the sense that the people who are there are not educated. Musalia Mudavadi was one among the best finance ministers we've ever had. He is one of the best leaders we have ever had here. But the rest is history. We say that. I think it's important in a very short way to say what's wrong with the Kenya's foreign policy now, particularly the pronouncements by the president. in a number of cases, we have adopted the policy they call strategic ambiguity, meaning you are neither here nor there. And this is a position we adopted in regard to Israel's recognition of Somaliland. You kept some silence. Of course, that told the world where we are. We are with the UAE and the IOC. That's it. So Somalia doesn't need to think very hard about where Kenya is. It's not the way you'd talk about other countries relating to this particular Saudi Arabia and others. Mm-hmm. In this particular case, I think I would read more psychology in the president's response. Okay. It was more a psychological response. Why? Because in April 1980, we signed a defense agreement with the United States, which has been subsequently renewed, 1990, 2000, that defense pact. And therefore, of all the list of the countries the president listed, the only country that has not yet been attacked by Iran is us. Because Iran was attacking American bases in countries. And possibly Lamu, and I would say possibly Ramu and Mombasa, where American Navy have been. And remember, Kenya and all these other guerrilla movements those times were basically up against that particular agreement. They really raised against it. So when he moves to attacking retaliatory violence by Iran and not attack the preemptive violence of Israel and America, then there's double standards. And I don't want to be part of that double standard, Kenya. And I say Kenya is better than that. Yeah. We have been, the public, the Kenyan public know better than that. That you attack, the first person, you condemn the person who attacked first. And then you can go on and say whether the retaliation is within measures or it's out of proportions. With Iran, they have not responded by a nuclear bomb, which would have been improportional. They have just defended themselves. How are they expected to behave when their head of state is decapitated? The country is decapitated. Are they supposed to lie, and wait because the head of state has been killed? So at the best, if they did that to our state house, all these differences you hear in Kenya would evaporate. We'll all be in arms in defense of our president. So that's who we are.
And that is the counter effect on what was expected of a regime change as anticipated by the Americans.
Yes.
But it seems now it's a long engagement in the Middle East again. Daktari, to you, this is having even a strain on the transatlantic relationship or the special relationship. Ideally, from that perspective, what ought to have happened in the context of the president's response?
Well, thank you, Ayub, for having me this morning. The rains are a bit heavy outside, but it's a nice wet morning, and we think those are showers of blessings, as it were. Now, in traditional diplomacy, and I agree with Professor Kawanja, the old Platonian view that the country needs to have its very best in positions of leadership and influence. That's philosopher Plato, who said that several centuries before. Now, in traditional diplomacy, as I was saying, the president is the chief diplomat of the country. And he really has a right and an obligation to hold a position on behalf of you and me and probably the general region, because currently I think he's the chairman of
East African Community.
East African Community. He has that right. But beyond the right to speak and the right to hold an opinion and the right to state the position of the country, the real situation on the ground, and political scientists are here, realpolitik, required that we needed to think beyond immediate interests of either the country or individuals within the country. The old adage that a friend of your enemy is your enemy still rings very true in this case. And Ayubi have seen a pattern in Iran's response to the attacks from Israel and the United States. They are actually targeting, American interests, and Prof has stated it. They are targeting American interests in the Middle East, in Oman, in United Arab Emirates, in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, and many other countries. We don't want, as a country, in my considered opinion, to be caught in the crossfire of these conflicts. I know where, if I use that traditional phrase, where bread is buttered in our international relations. I know that very well. But if I were the president, and I'm not, tactical inaction, tactical silence, strategic silence for now would have served us better. There are many other channels, actually, to assuage the ego of some of our traditional allies without becoming very open. We have become victims of attacks that are targeted at American interests in the region and in the country. I mean, the 1998 bomb blast, still, the memories are very fresh. The Kampala attack, the Westgate. Ayub, with such memories, how soon do we forget?
Interesting.
The moral identity of a people is also very important, because what is happening in the Middle East is a moral outrage, and from a position of statism, it is quite natural for there to be a rational analysis of the situation. However, nations are just not rational beings. We have multiple identities, and our moral character rejects what is happening in the Middle East, and particularly in Iran. I think that we need to historicize what is happening in Iran, because there are facts and myths, as the show says. And one of the facts is that Iran experienced something called a coup d'etat by the United States under President Eisenhower during the time of Mossadegh.
Operation Ajax.
Yes, and the Shah was installed by the CIA. That's another fact. And after a huge repression period by the Shah, the Iranian people had an organic revolution in which the Shiite Muslim theology took the state from a popular uprising of the people. And I think it is very important for the vocabulary of Western civilization not to be used in the context of another civilization, as if the yardstick of civilization is the vocabulary of democratic government, the ideas of a liberal market. There are civilizational differences in the world. And one of the civilizational differences is that the Persians, who are now called Iran, have a civilization of 2,500 to 3,000 years. When the pilgrims were landing on Plymouth Rock 250 years ago, with small boats and being helped by the Native American to survive, the civilization of the Persians were charting the stars and brought knowledge to the world, and they were the light. And I think that that's very important for us to make that distinction. The second distinction that we need to make is on the eve of the bombing of the Iranian people, the Secretary of State, Mr. Rubio, has actually just said that, this was a civilizational conflict that was coming. And that the Western civilization should not apologize for slavery, for colonialism, and for empire. And that the heroes, and that's his language, and the titans of Western civilizations are the ones who, from a small island in England, went forth and brought civilization to the rest of the world. And I think we need to challenge that kind of discourse, because it is not based on fact. Scientific fact. Civilizations have always, as Edward Said has taught us, have informed each other. When they had universities in Cordoba and streetlights and using soap, the English were bathing in the Thames River. So this civilizational idea about people having a superior race, and particularly from a person who's from Cuban roots, who may have native blood, who may have African blood, who may, and it's appalling. Lastly, I think that the great Aimé Césaire said that the moral identity or the illness of civilization. Today we know under the Epstein files that members of Congress, and this is not my own words, that the United States Congress, that senators and congressmen are saying that there is a war that has been propagated on the people of Iran to put the Epstein files out of the table.
Okay.
I think the question that we need to ask, it's a very profound question, and we have to morally reply, is whether or not the American Republic and its empire, and of course there's an empire, and the kind of hegemony that it wants to bring to the Middle East through its client state, Israel, whether the world of maybe 8 billion people is going to accept for there to be a new colonial empire that takes over the world in this strident and really shocking way.
Yeah, okay. And when we get back from the break, about in 2 minutes' time, Dr. Ari, I'll begin with you because it brings up a very profound point. So we have traced back the speech by President Eisenhower when he delivered that before the State of the Union address, where he allowed Iran also to be part of the conglomerate, what he termed as the atoms, the peace, and how he had trained Iranian scientists, the Americans also, the tacit consent that Washington had given. We'll be playing that back for our panelists here on the broadcast when we get back from the break, and we welcome your contributions. Back with more after the break here. Stay with us.